with the definition of what's a low-speed vehicle. Golf carts are prohibited, low-speed vehicles are not. Low-speed vehicle is a golf cart with a safety belt and all that stuff. Okay, yeah, no problem at all. I asked the same question. I gavelled into order this
Recording in progress.
meeting of the Public Safety Committee. What is today's date? For the 24th of August, 2022. Can we have a roll call, please?
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims. Here. Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill. All members present.
Thank you. Has the committee had an opportunity to review the agenda for this evening? And more importantly, do they wish to make any changes to that agenda? Seeing no changes in the agenda, it will stand as submitted. The next item is citizen comments. If there's anybody in the audience, anybody online who wishes to make a comment with regard to public safety issues in the city of Brentwood, I'll give you up to 3 minutes. Please identify yourself and your address. Yeah. So we have another citizen comment at the end, which would come after we would deal with the golf cart, but you're welcome to make a comment now if you'd like.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
Matt Lang, Litzinger. Just wanted to first of all say thank you to this committee and the board for taking up the low-speed vehicle topic. Appreciate it. I am a low-speed vehicle owner, and it's important to us and a number of other residents around Brentwood. I've had a chance to read the current draft. I think it's fantastic. I just wanted to point out a couple of concerns on behalf of myself and another resident, Dan Glass. One of them is the limitation of use on Litzinger, west of Brentwood, I believe is the way it's written. This restriction would essentially eliminate the ability to use the stoplight at Litzinger and Brentwood, which is really counterintuitive to public safety for our east and west residents to be able to cross Litzinger safely. That stretch of Litzinger west of Brentwood is 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, I believe. Most of it has shoulders. I've driven on it a number of times with my daughter. If there's a car behind me, I'm able to easily pull over and let the car pass. I really see no reason why we would prohibit them on Litzinger, that stretch. And again, even if the committee disagrees with that, I would ask that we at least consider a stretch west of Brentwood so that we can utilize that stoplight to cross. The other concern is McKnight, limiting on McKnight. I understand that's a little bit higher traffic area and I think a higher speed limit, but by limiting use on McKnight, it essentially excludes York Village from really being able to get outside of York Village or vice versa. And then the last concern I wanted to raise was with regard to Brentwood bound. I believe I read that the use of tunnels is prohibited and there's no verbiage in there to write any sort of provision. And so as we consider the Brentwood bound development, I would request that some verbiage be put in there to allow use of that tunnel so that low-speed vehicles can have access to the park safely under Manchester. That's all.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Lawrence Taylor, 9348 Parkside. We moved here just prior to COVID, so this is my first time to attend. I'd like to say this was a very good idea that your newsletter carries the forward scheduling of these and various other meetings that we can attend. This is the first I've been able to attend. My observation is about traffic on Litzinger. So I have no idea whether there are others who have the same comment. Anecdotally, we believe so from our neighbors. But with the traffic on the north-southbound lanes becoming quite heavy, there seems to be an increasing amount of traffic at higher speed going east-west on Litzinger.
Can you tell me what section of Litzinger you're talking about?
I'm 2 blocks from Tillis Park.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's a feedback loop where the police are monitoring and seeing what's going on. I notice in the streets just north of us, there are speed bumps that have been put in. So I don't know, maybe there's a strategy involved to manage that, or maybe my observations are just because I happen to live facing Lissinger. But I wanted to report that there seems to be an elevated volume and speed that would safety hazard. So that's my report.
Thank you very much.
If there's a feedback loop or there's a strategy, I'd be happy to have an offline.
Yeah, typically the citizen comments section is not a give and take, question and answer opportunity. But there is opportunity for an alderperson response or a committee person response in just a couple of sections here. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Good thing we have the police.
Huh?
It's a good thing we have the police
But
here
there was no
tonight.
feedback during this part.
Yeah, that's right.
Brandon Wegge, 8537 Douglas. Hey, I've been looking at the low-speed vehicle and just a couple things I wanted to provide some input on. One is in the section where the trails that you're talking about that we can use. One is item 3, which is the northern end of Salem
Yeah,
Road west to Cecilia.
I caught that.
didn't get
It's
that right, did we?
it's impassable, right.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Okay.
go to the east
Okay.
and Litzinger, Eulalie.
Great.
Okay.
And then the other two inputs, I agree with Matt on the Litzinger Road, being able to use that. One thing to keep in mind too is that next year, all the Mark Twain students will actually be going to McGrath. So you'll probably see, an additional number of low-speed vehicles going over there. That seems like a safer way of doing it. And I know it gets weird when we own half of the road and things like that, but it just seems like that's a big miss to at least have that one section for low-speed vehicles. And then just the permitting process, I don't see the point of that. If we're following whatever regulations and must comply with the state, why are we taking the additional step of making people to get a sticker from the city of Brentwood? We don't do that for dogs, we don't do that for cars. It just seems like more work for city staff to have to do on a non-regular basis, and I just don't see any value. Just wanted to provide some input, thank you. Otherwise, I think it looks great.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Anybody online?
No hands raised.
Okay. Thank you very much. Here we are. We now come to topic number 4A, the compensation plan report. It's my understanding that this plan is before Ways and Means currently, but members of the Ways and Means Committee had indicated that they wanted at least some portion of this compensation plan report affects uniformed officers in Brentwood, that they wanted this committee an opportunity to hear what that's about. Bola, do you want to speak to those two issues having to do with police and fire, or do you want somebody else to?
Well, I would like Jason to provide an overview, and then Chief Spees and Assistant Fire Chief Bernie are here to speak to their request individually.
Thanks very much.
Jason Coates for the City of Brentwood. In a nutshell, when we were looking at the compensation plan going forward, we requested that any potential changes that were going to be suggested for the future plan from the various department heads come through the process and then get sent over to Higbee and Associates. Part of that was the police department had requested a potential restructure where basically 2 of the sergeant positions would be elevated to that of a lieutenant, and on the fire side, basically have a promotional opportunity for 3 individuals, be they paramedics or EMTs, to become permanent engineers because there is additional requirements for that particular position, and they felt that an additional portion of compensation would be advisable given that there are additional educational requirements and the like. We did that
Jason.
as part of that. Sorry. Alrighty. Hopefully I don't have to start over again, but in essence, the compensation plan as it was presented was what came from Higbee and Associates that basically put those particular positions, assigned a dollar figure or a value to those. With the advent of the lieutenant position, that required a new grade be added to the compensation plan for the fire side. The idea of the engineers was more of a stipend. That way it would be assigned to whichever, whether it was an EMT or a paramedic. So basically, that was what went before the Ways and Means Committee. I think they wanted to have it come to this committee as it was a potential restructure. And I don't really want to speak any more than that, but whatever additional information I'll be happy to provide.
So this, this portion of the plan, this renaming of these positions involves 2 police officers and 3 firefighters?
It would be 3, yes, excuse me, 2 police officers and 3 firefighters, correct?
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else on the committee have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, when this issue came up before Ways and Means, I mean, I'm just trying to kind of frame it, you know, we will review, analyze, you know, the compensation portion of this, but when we were discussing these positions, I just wanted to hear from this committee from a public safety perspective, you know, these changes or reclassifications, like what if, well, how does that, you know, from a public safety perspective? I'm not asking you to, or, you know, or the committee wasn't asking you to weigh in on the budget process. You certainly, I welcome you to attend those meetings, and you will be recognized to ask questions. It was trying to just, from a public safety perspective, what are the implications of these classifications? And so that's why, and I, you know, didn't want to, I wanted to share the wealth in terms of topics to be considered on committees. So that's where we were coming from.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments at this point? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Jason. To the Alderwoman's point, can the representatives of the fire and fire department and the police department just kind of speak to that? Not so much the compensation issue, but the notion of how this may better serve safety for the residents of Brentwood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We listed in going into this year as one of the goals and objectives of the Brentwood Police Department was consideration for trying to create a better accountability for the police department in terms of rank structure. As part of that, we really studied, and when I say we, it was Major McIntyre, Major Hawkins, and myself, explored the opportunity to be able to come up with ways to make the police department as accountable as we can through supervision. Currently, we have 2 sergeants that are in the roles of training sergeant and detective sergeant. So the idea that we came up with was to assimilate those roles into a lieutenant's position so they would still do those things. But then they also take on the added responsibility of managing 2 squads each. So they become what is a traditional watch commander position in law enforcement. We have a very volatile job in 2022. I don't need to go into that much for everybody to realize that we can make one mistake and have a lot of problems. The way to limit those exposure to those problems and the way to limit our city to those problems is to have oversight and good supervision. So what we are asking is that we elevate 2 sergeants. So this is not going to require promotions behind it. These are 2 existing sergeants that would simply be raised to the level of lieutenant. Right now, those 2 sergeants make overtime. So when you look at the cost benefit of this, it's actually going to save money for the city in the long run because they make money in overtime outside and above what they would make in this rank of lieutenant. These are exempt positions, at least that's my understanding from Jason Coates. They will be exempt positions, set at their salary. They will work shifts, they will work weekends, they're subject to 24-hour call-ins. So quite frankly, we were a little concerned that we would have sergeants even interested to do this. We did a cursory review, and we do have people that would be interested. So as you look at the request, I think some of the blowback was, well, what are others doing? What are other police departments doing? And quite frankly, I don't know, and I don't really care. I think this is a topic for the Brentwood Police Department. This is what you hired me to do and the 2 majors to do, make good decisions for you. We're making a recommendation that is very cost effective. It's probably going to save money. This is pretty simple. We're dumping more responsibility on 2 people to better manage our police department. And it's not really even more complicated than that. And that's our request.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question for the chief.
Sorry about that. Yeah, please.
We have a spreadsheet in front of us that does list a lot of comparable cities. I understand your comment about not caring what the other cities do, but as far as CALIA goes, how does that come into play with these type of positions? Do they have any statement on?
CALIA's emphasizes the oversight of a police department, so how they don't make recommendations on rank structure necessarily. But CALIA is an interesting topic because as you look at trying to create 2 positions of lieutenant in our police department, the CALIA process is complicated. And the more people we can plug into the process of keeping the accreditation of our department and the process behind that is all the better for us as well. So these 2 lieutenant positions will be forced into that process of auditing and all the other things that go behind that CALIA accreditation. So you're going to hear in my report that we were just recently reaccredited, but we're facing another on-site audit next year. So that part of the CALIA process is important for more people to know than just Jim McIntyre and Angie Hawkins and Joe Spees. So this is also a way to incorporate additional employees so that they have a very strong working knowledge of what CALIA means and how you get it done.
And then the other departments, I'm not familiar with which ones are CALIA accredited. Are most of the county departments accredited?
Yeah, typically they'll either be CALIA accredited or through the Missouri State Police Chiefs Association.
All right.
The ones around us, the cities that touch us, I believe are all CALIA accredited. But there are others that are Missouri Police Chiefs accredited.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Good evening. So the fire department portion of the proposal essentially creates a position of engineer, which is a equipment operator for the fire truck. It doesn't increase staffing. It's just a classification for a position that is being filled right now. It'll be a tested position based off professional credentialing, and they're essentially a stipend position for the extra responsibility of knowing how to operate the truck. It directly impacts fireground safety when we're on a call. I would offer that there are instances throughout the country where the person driving the truck couldn't get water out of it, or the other engine that was feeding it was getting it air instead of water, locked up the pump. There are a lot of systems on the truck. These people that operate it now are very familiar with that system. This particular proposal also directly supports our strategic plan goal of professional development. This will be a tested and a credentialed position through the Missouri Division of Fire Safety. And it'll only be 3 positions. And right now, based off of informal audit, we have more people that are interested in this position than the actual number of positions, so it will be a competitive process.
Does anybody in the committee have any questions for? I have one. So you said there's a testing process to gain this additional classification. Is it book testing or is it?
It'll be based off of some IFSTA best practices throughout the industry that align with NFPA for the driver operator, and then also there's a curriculum guide, if you will, that comes from the Missouri Division of Fire Safety. So essentially what we'll do is we will send folks to the MO-DFS class to be certified, and then we'll use that knowledge base plus the intricacies that we need for the city of Brentwood proper, and then also what ties into the professional credentialing with NFPA.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you. In terms of action by this committee, there's no motion that's really required here. Do we, as a committee, is there some sort of consensus as to whether or not, I don't know, one way or the other? Okay. Anybody have any?
I mean, I don't know if it would come in the form of from a public safety perspective, is there, do you have an objection to what's being requested, or otherwise, from a public safety perspective?
Right.
We'll deal with the money at Ways and Means, you know, or
Right.
would you, you know, approve of what is being requested just from that angle? That was why I wanted to bring it, ask that it be considered by this committee.
Okay. So I guess what I would say at this point is if anybody on the committee has concerns from a public safety perspective about these two proposed changes, let's put them on the record, on the committee notes record now for the benefit of Ways and Means. I'll open it up to the committee for that. Sorry, I didn't see that either.
They seem like reasonable requests, and I see no reason not to go along with them if Ways and Means can find the funding for them.
As far as fire, I would agree with Assistant Chief. I just have concerns about, and I'm willing to have a debate with Chief Spees on if we're just starting to make our personnel more administrative top-heavy as opposed to boots on the ground with this. And I don't know where these positions would elevate it to lieutenant from sergeant, would take them out of the field. I'm not quite getting a feel for the structure that's there.
So the positions that we talked about that'll be the transition will be the training sergeant and the detective sergeant. Neither one of them are on the street. So in effect, there would be no change in the status in the way they do their job. They're more office-oriented. But again, the training sergeant, as a lieutenant, would be responsible for those same duties. So would the detective sergeant in terms of running the bureau, but they have additional responsibilities. But to answer your question, they are not street officers at this point. So those positions are simply being elevated and given more responsibility, but still more of a administrative office job that they have now.
Okay, thank you.
The 20 officers and supervisors that ride the street in uniform and answer radio calls every day, that doesn't change this. All this does is give better support to them.
Thank you. Do you have any other comment? No. Okay. I don't have any objection from a public safety standpoint to either one of these changes. So thank you for bringing that to us. Next item on the agenda is committee chair and alderman reports. I don't have a report except to try to answer, I think Lawrence, Mr. Taylor's comment earlier, just to say that Litzinger is problematic in that stretch only because it's in part Rock Hill and it's in part Brentwood. But there is a traffic calming toolkit that's available to you through our website, through the Public Works Department, that there's a process involved in terms of gathering signatures and having testing done to determine if calming methods should be deployed in that stretch. I can tell you that it's been studied at least once before from the standpoint of additional stop signs to speed humps to additional signage. It's not that it's other people haven't identified it as a problem, but it has been studied. But I thank you for your comments. That's my report. Alderwoman Sims?
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Lockmiller?
No report.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
I'd like to respond also to Mr.
Absolutely.
Taylor's comment. When my teenagers were driving, Litzinger was always a problem. My daughter had never had a speeding ticket, but that's what happened on Litzinger. The southern half of that street has been zealously guarded in terms of speed limits, and they have made a tidy sum on Brentwood people and other people going through there at a higher rate because they stick to that rate. But every day is a new issue. We're talking more than 20 years ago. It's still the same issue today. As a bicyclist, I worry about using that. The shoulder's not huge. The traffic is speedier than it should be. A golf cart on it, frankly, scares me for the occupants of the golf cart. there's no magic answer because of the connections of that street as a through street. So I hear you, I have no solution, but I agree, it is a problem.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 6, the Police Department reports.
Yes, sir. I'd like to start with the crime report as we usually do. The month of July was the month of car crime in the city of Brentwood, like everywhere else in Central County. We had 9 stolen cars in the month of July, which is high for us, but we've had a lot of cars broken into. We had a couple high-profile incidents that I believe everybody at the dais up here is aware of on Sunday afternoon in somebody's driveway. Just like to give you a little quick update on that. There were 2 guys identified. One is in custody. He's a juvenile. The second one fled the St. Louis area. They are being charged and wanted for 43 incidents in July alone. That includes 3 garage burglaries that they did trying to steal people's cars out of their garage while the people were home. They were involved in at least 3 flourishing incidents in driveways where they pulled guns on people who challenged them. They were responsible for over 10 stolen cars. They ran from the police at least 5 times that we know for sure during that time period, and were let go all 5 times. So these 2 guys have been identified and on the radar. We've cleaned up several of the crimes that happened in Brentwood with those 2. And again, one of them's not in custody and one is. Interestingly, the 9 cars we did have stolen in July have all been recovered at this point, which is a bit unusual, but they've all been recovered and returned to the owners. Our area garages continue to be the #1 target for car break-ins. We had one on the 21st where 16 cars were broken into at Spring Hill Garage. This is an interesting case as well. It mimics the guys I just talked to you about. This is a different crew, but they hit Overland and stole 3 cars on a Sunday morning during the daylight hours and used those 3 cars in the commission of a series of crime, including ours in Brentwood, breaking into these cars that night. A lot of the stolen things were recovered when the police chased them and they were involved in an accident and caught. A lot of the stolen property was in those 3 cars after they ended up recovering, including 2 firearms, 1 taken in Brentwood. So we continue to have guns stolen. In this reporting period, since I've seen you last at the Public Safety Committee meeting, we've had 7 good flock hits. When I say good, some of these flock hits coming through our cameras end up being cars that were recovered already or whatever the scenario may be. But we've had 7 active stolen cars or cars wanted for a felony that were identified. And out of those 7, 5 of them ran from the Brentwood Police Department, all of which we had to let go. However, it is an effective tool for us to be able to identify and get rid of those that are doing the wrong thing. You may have heard about a case about 2 weeks ago. We had a flash mob hit our Alta. I frankly don't know how Alta's still in business. They are just a frequent flyer for theft. It seems an everyday event. In this event, they had 11 people come up in 3 cars, descend on Alta, go in, and just started taking everything that they could put their hands on. Nobody at the store challenged them, which is probably the way they're taught. We got there shortly after the 3 cars left, and they got about $15,000 worth of perfume and other things out of the store. So I suspect based on their success that those things will continue to happen. And they are happening in other areas. I mentioned earlier that our CALEA certification was re-upped. We're already preparing for next year in March when CALEA descends back on our city. They're going to talk to the mayor, the city administrator, and of course they'll be in the police department embedded with us for a couple days. It's an arduous process for us that a little stressful, but they pretty much go through everything we do with a fine-tooth comb. So we're looking forward to that next March. We'll see how it goes. The last meeting that we had here at Public Safety, I made a request for Corporal Nick Lang for consideration to go to the County Police Academy to teach. I think you all remember that in the last board meeting it went to a closed process. My understanding is that there's a review being done by a labor attorney. I think that's what you directed. So I'm hoping that the next board meeting that we can get some closure on that and be able to give an answer to St. Louis County. There has been a lot of turmoil and ongoing turmoil for months now about a guy who's been walking his two dogs. This is mostly in the western end of town. Just a quick update on him. We had a summons issued to him about 6 weeks ago. I'm not saying he's not out doing the same thing and not walking his dogs, but we have not heard it. And we have dropped business cards on everybody that we could and that's made a complaint on that, and there's about 30 of them. So nobody's called us. If that's going on, we don't know it. But he is looking at a court date at the next city court. So we're hoping that the judge and the city prosecutor take a close look at that case and try and figure out a way to make that better, because it's been a big issue in the neighborhood. I think it was 2 meetings ago, we talked about the Brentwood bound security package, that the recommendations the police department made. As part of that, it was a canine officer, hiring 3 officers to protect the area, 1 being a canine officer. We continue to move forward with 5013C, which the board approved, I think it was right before COVID. Went into dormancy when we hit COVID, but it's alive and well now, thanks to a good citizen that's come forward. So we're hoping to get that off the ground and positioned so that if there's some movement on the potential for a canine officer, there could be the funding there for it through this 5013C. The last thing I was going to mention is we're starting a program September 1st. It's not real complicated, but we're trying to figure out a way to get into our neighborhoods and really get some touch to our citizens a little better than we've been doing. So we came up with an idea that's a hybrid of a bike and walk patrol for our officers. So we've identified 7 officers that we're putting on this detail. During the course of their shifts, what they'll be doing is taking a bike into a designated area. Major Hawkins has split Brentwood into 10 sectors. She's going to have them ride different sectors all the time. And they are to get off their bikes and walk and meet and greet people, ask what problems we have. If they come up with problems from citizens, they're to put it on our MyGov system. It's just an easy way for us to track stuff, whether it be a traffic issue, like this man talking about Litzinger is a great example. That's something we can throw on MyGov, but it gives us the opportunity to be able to track it as well. We are going to use our body-worn camera system to track number of contacts with our citizens. Of course, review them, see how they go. We're going to do this for a 6-month period, and then we're going to take a step back and look at it and see, is it working? Is it something that we're going to continue to do? So it's a little labor intensive in managing it, but it's one of those things that if we don't have someone watching and directing and controlling it, it's very difficult to see if it's having any success. And sometimes these things will fall through the cracks if we don't watch them closely. So moving forward with that, we'll start September 1st. You happy to answer any questions if anybody has any?
Questions of the committee? Chief, thank you for your report.
Yes, sir.
Assistant Chief, yeah.
Good evening again.
Invest in microphones.
Just like they did on the pit crew. Good evening, thanks again. The PSC report at your positions is slightly inaccurate as of yesterday. For our department staffing update, our newest employee, Mr. Lampkin, came into my office yesterday morning and resigned. After a lengthy conversation covering the whys, we determined that he has some type of a family crisis conflict that will prevent him from remaining employed with us. So I spent a lot of time figuring out, is it something, a system, a process? Give me a shot to fix this first before you pull the ripcord, but that was not the case. He says we have a great department. It's just his family issue is going to prevent him from remaining employed. So we are down another spot again with Chief Cottrell being out of town. Been in contact with him several times over the last 24 hours, so we're putting a process together to commence next Monday to go through our eligibility list. So hopefully we'll be bringing good news to you by next month. The ECDC update, they continue to work on the CAD system upgrade. I am scheduled for Train the Trainer, the session that was not successful last month. That's next Thursday. They're still predicting that September 26th will be the rollout and the go-live date for the entire CAD system for all fire and police for the ECDC agencies. There are some components that still need to be worked on and in process, and technology and devices. We have planned and budgeted for that, so far all of the meetings and planning processes that we've been to, there were no surprises for us. Under the professional development tab, I participated in the CFAI re-accredited commission hearings in Denver last week. I represented 2 agencies, one in Canada. That was my last round for doing that. Been doing it 13 years, and I can't travel anymore. Going out 3, 4, 5 times a year, using benefit days for that. It's just someone else can do it. Additionally, in San Antonio right now for the FRI conference, so he has a shopping list of professional development, tools, techniques, and training that he's going to be bringing back for us, and we'll incorporate those as they fall within our strategic plan. I know we'll be speaking about this a little bit later on in new business, but the EMS billing, so the Missouri GMT program, we were subject to an audit, so that 2020 audit has been finalized. Essentially, we're going to get an additional $3,700 plus added to the account for the Medicaid transports that we've done. And those should be completed by the end of October. And going along with that, at the end of next month, Chief Cottrell and Lieutenant Herman will be going to the EMS MC Billing Conference in North Carolina. And essentially that's to get the latest, greatest updates, tactics, and strategies so we can maximize the returns on our billing processes. No surprises, you know, we had historic flood events last month. We still continue to partner with other departments in the city to assist with damage assessment and cleanup. The fortunate thing, all of the equipment that the fire department used in those events that was contaminated or damaged has been ordered and replaced, and it's already back in service. And we continue to explore options for how we can make the next event, if it happens, a little bit better. I know you have some information at your positions about a potential drone purchase. I'm doing the research on that. Right now that is a work in process, but that's a industry standard for fire departments when they start working on emergency management and wide area operations. So very flexible, very diversified platform that we can use across all the departments in the city, not just for fire. So just keep that in mind for consideration. And then finally, our training update this month, we have a building at 9001 Manchester that we've been breaking into, doing forcible entry, live, breaking down the door, replacing, and props. So that's valuable training that we usually don't get to do on a regular building. So all the crews are appreciative of the fact they get to do a little manual labor and forcible entry. That's it for the fire department report. I'll be glad to entertain any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions for the Assistant Chief? Thank you very much. Thank you for your report.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yep. Dan, Public Works?
Just a few items to update on since the last meeting. The York Village Solar Lights will be renting a portable lift. We tried to coordinate with an outside electrician, but so far our schedules haven't meshed, so we'll just take it upon ourselves. We did check the batteries today. The batteries still have voltage. They're back at the shop. And then we also look for the other equipment, so like the wiring harnesses, everything's still in the boxes, so we should have everything to go out there. And it did call the one that we rented the lift from before. They've got, I think he said, 5 lifts available from 45 feet to 50 feet articulating lifts, so we should be good. And then switching gears to Manchester Road, I'm sure most of you have seen the update from MoDOT. So right now, you know, traffic is on the northern half from the center line up to the northern edge of Manchester Road, close to the pedestrian tunnel. they're about halfway done with that pedestrian tunnel. So what that means is they'll be switching traffic to the opposite halves around Labor Day. So instead of driving on the northern half, you'll be driving on the southern half, and they'll be working on that northern side, completing the tunnel. I know Missouri American finished their water main relocation near the tunnel, and, you know, everything is on schedule so far with the tunnel, as well as the bridge. So, looks like probably sometime in October that tunnel will open, or at least be done. You know, it won't open to pedestrians, but it'll be done such that you can go from one side to the other. And then on the Brentwood bound at or Brentwood Boulevard rather at Strassner, MSD's trying to get a permit from the county so they can dig up Brentwood Boulevard because there's that sewer connection. I believe it's for 2010 South Brentwood. We looked at it through the lateral. We saw where it connects. They went into their trunk line to see where it connects. We're in two different pipes. So they need to confirm that the person that's at 2010's been paying a bill since forever, but it's connected to probably a pipe that's abandoned, which is then filling up with sewage, and then, you know, the lowest elevation is down where it pools there at Strassner. So I know the county's actually been good. Anytime we notice it settling, we'll notify them and they'll add asphalt. But, you know, the long-term fix is to get rid of this connection that shouldn't be there. That way there's no more pooling, and then once there's no more pooling, then you can saw cut out the bad area and put new material in there. So the goal is to try to get it done before winter, because otherwise it's gonna ice up like it does every winter. And then the last item, traffic calming. We still owe you a Lawn Avenue from Brentwood to High School. So we've got all the reports. We just need to put it in a memo and bring that back. And then Pine Avenue, we're gonna deploy the data collector between High School and St. Clair. We'd been asked to look at that. We did look at it before. It didn't warrant speed cushions, but it's been more than the 6 months to do a second run. And now would be a good time because school's back in session. So if you're gonna get some real volumes and speeds and all that, now would be the time, you know, to catch it. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Dan. Questions? Yeah, Steve?
Dan, is there any thought when the bridge opens up at Hanley and you got 2 lanes going each way, is the tunnel gonna be completed by then? Or are we gonna be sending traffic flowing towards that tunnel with 1 lane going each way?
I don't know, I have to ask MoDOT because the way I understood it, once the tunnel's complete, then both lanes of traffic, you'd have 2 lanes eastbound, 2 lanes westbound.
Right. But is that, I don't know the timing of the bridge being completed and opened.
The bridge will open before the tunnel. That's always been, or not always, but at least for the last month, maybe 2 months. So the bridge, they believed, would open middle of September. The tunnel was more mid to late October.
I know, but do you think they've cognizant of all that traffic now coming off of Hanley?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Heading
Yeah.
westward towards a funnel?
Right, it constricts down.
Yeah. And where's that traffic gonna go?
And with this switch, it also puts some traffic, because they'll no longer be able to drive on that northern side. It'll push them different directions because you wouldn't necessarily be able to take some
Well, my concern is that it's gonna push them into the
residential.
neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna wanna sit there bottlenecked at that tunnel construction area. I mean, is there any way they can postpone the opening of the bridge until the tunnel's done?
That I don't know. I mean, we can ask them. It's MoDOT's schedule, but
Yeah.
the only other option I guess they would do is different traffic control measures to try to mitigate that.
I just think it's something to keep in mind as that time approaches. And then my second thing was, how we doing on removing that no parking sign on High School behind?
Oh, the draft is written. I have to send it to Kevin, though.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll require an ordinance, you know,
Right.
change. So that'll have to go to the board.
Okay, so just looking forward to it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah, Alderman.
Karen, is there any update on the lights that are out on that berm on Strassner? You know, in the pole that's...
I know it's with insurance. I have to check with finance. I know that it's more than the deductible. Deductible's 5,000, and I want to say it was like closer to 12. Because there is a second one, I'm sure you saw that a car went way too fast going southbound, I guess made a left to go eastbound, hit the light and sheared it off, probably sent it 30 feet in multiple pieces. So now we got 2, actually all 5 of them are out because when it pulled the first time, it jerked the wire loose and tripped everything. And Now the second one broke that loose, so we'll probably have to run new conduits and, well, I know we'll need new conduits and wiring at least for 2 of them, possibly for 5 of them. They're not elastic, you can't stretch copper like that. So, long story short, I'll check with finance because I don't have an exact update. I know it's been turned in as an insurance claim, and I got 2 quotes. I just need to be told to go ahead and proceed.
Thanks. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
We're now coming to old business. Number 7A on the agenda is the low-speed vehicle slash golf cart and golf cart follow-up. If you look at what we wrote, there'd been 3 concerns raised, essentially. One had to do with the language already contained within the proposed ordinance, directing traffic within a trailway system to the west when the trail itself is too narrow to support a golf cart. So that was changed, and that's reflected in the amended wording in the history part of this. But there were 2 other comments raised during public comment having to do with traffic on Litzinger and traffic on McKnight, and then last but not least, traffic with regard to the tunnel that connects the Parkway to, to the other side of Manchester Road, to the GRG. Is there anybody on the committee that wants to speak to any one of those? Or to the current state of the ordinance? Steve, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you can answer this, because I think Eric already has, but the GRG on the other side of Manchester Road, they do not permit golf carts or any low-speed vehicles on their section of that path.
We've heard that, yes.
Okay. So that would limit really tunnel use onto the GRG.
Right.
Yeah. On the north side too. I mean, our current situation does not, we'd have to amend that language to include it on that trail system as well.
Right.
Is there anybody else who wants to weigh in on either Litzinger, McKnight, or with regard to the tunnel?
My understanding, so we are not allowing low-speed vehicles on Litzinger on the
Currently,
west
Litzinger
side?
is one of the streets that's prohibited.
And and the reason behind that is that because of, like, we don't control all of it, I mean, on to the south, or?
Yeah, that was part of it. I actually redlined that part on mine. I just put I put excluding roadway portions in the city of Rock Hill, but it sounds like some folks would like to include Litzinger and just strike it so that it is able to be traveled upon. I think part of the reason why we decided to include Litzinger in the first place was just because emergency responders use that as an avenue to go from, Brentwood Boulevard to McKnight. So if you've got a low-speed vehicle ahead of you and you're a pumper truck, it's, I don't know, could be a challenge.
But are we even able, I mean, so we're on the Brentwood side going to a destination.
West, yeah.
And then if we want to come back, I mean, we don't have any ability to make Rock Hill.
That was one of the
say
parts that was
that-
problematic. I think that's what
Right.
Dan's talking about, is the fact that it wouldn't allow for a return trip no matter what along that stretch.
Right.
Same would be true of McKnight.
Yeah, McKnight already has volume issues. If you put even more, it doesn't really matter if thing can go 30 miles per hour, it's still adding volume.
The public comment point was well taken. I mean, you live in York Village, you live on Whitehall Court, and your use of a golf cart would be rather limited.
Right.
Go ahead.
I'm just thinking at the path that used to go from Fraser School over to York that was made narrower and narrower, should have been kept and made wider.
Yeah.
It comes back to haunt us.
It's definitely not wide enough for a golf cart. So at this point in time, unless anybody has any additions that they want to make to this or any changes, go ahead, Steve.
Well, that section, Brandon brought this up, the 340-270, that B, where it's got to be registered with the city and a sticker. I mean, somebody's gonna have to put together a policy for that. If it's already state titled and meets the requirements of the state, I don't see why we need that paragraph.
Are they state titled? Is it like a vehicle? I thought that the origin story of that paragraph had to do with that we needed a way to confirm that the low-speed vehicle otherwise complied with the requirements we're saying.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And so is that, I thought that that was the solution, like, well, they'll get a sticker, and I remember at the meeting, I think if it might have been, Chief B said that the police would do that as an accommodation, because it's still a relatively low number of vehicles we're talking about.
The enabling statute that says that low-speed vehicles can be allowed, in the state of Missouri, keeps or excuses an owner from the requirement of registration, titling, and personal property tax payment. It's in the statute. And so B started out as an annual inspection, that you had to go on an annual basis, or the police had to come to you on an annual basis and inspect your vehicle. It was reduced, and in the current language, it was a one-time inspection. And I think the logic was to just make sure, okay, there's seatbelts, there's a,
That was my understanding.
there's a light, there's a turn signal.
That and I, anecdotally, I think anyone that's come before this committee who owned a low-speed vehicle, already had those things. But I just think I think it's important that we confirm they have seatbelts, or other safety measures, and I think that's, if it's a one-time thing, there has to be some way that we're able to know that, that seemed like a way to thread the needle.
Well, I think most of them are sold that way, but I can't confirm that right as I sit here. But I think they already are. If they're considered a low-speed vehicle, they have all those items. But, yeah, if it's a one-time type thing, I have no problem with that. I guess then it's up to the police department to figure out what the sticker looks like and the procedure for all that once we pass this legislation. So I guess I have no problem with leaving it in if it's a one-time.
I had the, by state statute, the vehicles do not require Missouri state registration or licensing. In the enabling statute, so this would be the only registration, I guess.
And we can impose that.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't, just because they don't have it, you're not required to register with the state, doesn't mean we can't ask them to register with us.
Okay. Good, thanks for
We just
clarity.
can't prohibit them.
I-
Go ahead.
I'd like to see something there someplace so the city knows where they are and how many there are. There's no other way for us to know if there are 2 in the city or 42. But if, once they register it, then it's added to the count, and I think it's simply a knowledge type of thing.
And the reason for A, which is the section right above it, is that in the event that the state at some point required registration or state titling, we would simply require the same thing. But right now, as my understanding, they do not. The state does not require state titling or registration. So at this point, I guess I would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Aldermen the passage and approval of this bill with two additions. One, to change the language in 340.265, capital D3, to read, from the northern end of Salem Road east to Rosalie/Litzinger Avenue, and in additional to the ordinance language itself, or the bill language itself, direct staff to affix appropriate signage and other designations, paint, etc., to these sections of the trail described in section 340.265 D3, so that pedestrians and low-speed vehicles understand they share the trailway. Is anybody willing to make that motion?
So moved.
Seconded? It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. What, does the city put together a rationale, or am I responsible for that?
Staff does.
Yeah, we do.
Staff does? Okay,
Do you
very good.
want it as a first and second reading at the first meeting in September, or just do it on the 6th and then 2
I-
weeks later a second?
Honestly, my attitude, this is just me, I would say, let's separate it first and second reading, only because an alderman was here expressing some concern about the registration issue, and we've had two citizens here today expressing concerns about how accessible the vehicles are throughout the roadway. They're gonna have an opportunity in front of the entire board to express those same concerns to aldermen who aren't in this meeting, obviously, and get a chance to have that conversation again. So I'd recommend that we separate it so that has a first reading, there's an opportunity to ask questions, the public can weigh in again, and then 2 weeks later, we have the vote. That'd be my thought. Let's go ahead and do it that way. Thanks, Dan. Topic 8 is the MO GEMT agreement, the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program.
Correct. This is a request with supporting documentation at your position to continue the agreement language that has been in effect since 2019. I believe Mr. O'Keefe has reviewed and put his edits on to the resolution. This essentially continues the Medicaid transport reimbursement that we get from GEMT in line with EMSMC, which is our billing company. So they take care of all the paperwork and all of the federal reporting requirements that allow us to participate in GEMT. So this is essentially just a continuation of a program that we are currently participating in. The ask is that it be approved and then move forward to the full board for the September 6th meeting.
Thank you. Questions? Steve?
I was going to make the motion, go ahead and forward onto the full board in the form of a resolution extending the agreement for another year with EMSMC.
Is there a second to that? It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion or questions for the Assistant Chief? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Motion carries.
Thank you. You're up again.
How about that? Our next on the request list here, this is a capital purchase for a Lucas CPR device. If you've ever taken a CPR class, effective, high-quality, uninterrupted CPR is actually what provides return of spontaneous circulation, ROSC. We can give medicines, we can do defibrillation, but CPR uninterrupted and high quality is really what the program is about. We have a current device. It is nearing its end of life. We're asking to replace it with the Lucas device. We will, if granted the purchase, we'll be participating in a state bid contract, which has already been approved by Stryker. So we have a firm cost for that. In addition, because of some economies of scale that we've done so far this year in the 2022 capital budget, we have funding available for this. So the ask is for the amount listed in the document submitted at your positions.
I have a question for our Madam City Administrator. Does this, if we approve this, does this go to the full board for full approval? Okay.
It does.
It's not, it doesn't.
Yes.
Okay. Understanding that, are there any questions?
I got one.
Yeah, please.
Assistant Chief, have we used the old one ever? It's an amazing piece of equipment.
It is, unless, and again, just from personal experience, old school doing manual CPR in the back of a moving ambulance is not effective at all. This gets strapped to the patient before we load to the stretcher, and this does CPR uninterrupted the entire time. It's a game changer. If this was around in the 80s, CPR would be much, much better. But it's safer for us as well because you're not being bounced around in the back of the ambulance. And ultimately, it's better for the patient because it gives them a much better chance at a recurring ROSC event. So,
I'd make the motion that we go ahead with the purchase of the Lucas 3, refer it on to the full board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
great. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Chief. We come to our final citizen comment. If you have comments to make, you can come to the podium or raise your hand online, and you'll be recognized for up to 3 minutes on any topic discussed tonight or any topic regarding public safety. Anybody online?
No, sir. No one online.
All right, thank you. I'll close public comment, and seeing no additional items on the agenda, I declare this committee meeting adjourned.